Hi, and welcome back to Wednesday Wisdom here at Judaica.com. I'm Isaac, this is Chana. Today we're joined by Dr. Laura Gehl, a very old friend of mine who is currently a children's book author and has graciously come to talk about her books. So, as a preface, Laura and I went to graduate school together. We started here, it's a little more than 18 years ago, which I can't believe I'm saying that.
Now I feel very, very old.
But we were both in Georgetown together, and as you might have guessed, we both studied neuroscience. So,
shocker.
One day I will tell you my story of how my genesis of how I came from my PhD in neuroscience to Judaica. But Laura is here, and I hope Laura will tell us about her genesis because I'm excited to hear about how we went from intense Georgetown neuroscience to children's books.
Well, for me, there was definitely science involved in my process. I don't know if that was true for you and your route too, but it started with
spreadsheets. That's what I like.
It started with me writing articles about science, mostly targeted at kids. I wrote for kids' science magazines about different scientific topics, and it was just kind of like a side project because I love to write. And then once my first son was born, while we were still in grad school, and then I was pregnant with the second when I defended my thesis, and I thought I really need something I can do that's more flexible than working in a lab, and so I started doing more of the science writing, both for kids and for adults. And
it was different than me, by the way. I decided I didn't like being in the lab.
I did. I really liked being in the lab. I think the idea that you can discover something that no one has ever discovered before, even if it's something nobody cares about, which was definitely the case of any research I was doing, but that's really cool.
Right.
You know, you are actually discovering something. So I did really like that, but working in a lab is not a part-time, child-friendly kind of thing.
When I was a grad, my mentor still got upset at me because I had children. He's like, "Oh no, you got to be here all day." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen."
My thesis advisor was great, but it was just clear that I was not going to be able to work in a lab and spend as much time as I wanted with my kids. And so I shifted into really doing a lot of science writing. Wasn't working in the lab anymore, and I did that for a number of years. But the magazines, you know, I still get magazines for my kids and we love them, but you read it and you recycle it instantly. And I started feeling like I would love to do something more permanent if I could. And so I was trying to write science children's books, but I was really, really bad at it, as it turned out. And because writing, like for a magazine, it's such a different kind of writing, and I hadn't figured out how to do the book kind of writing yet. So I started writing fiction, and that's what I've done for a number of years.
This is really cool, by the way.
Fiction. But now I've finally come back around, and I do have a bunch of children's books with scientific themes coming out, and I've kind of figured out how to do that. Merge it. So I'm still writing fiction and both Jewish themes and non-Jewish themes. I have a Hanukkah book coming out next year, but it does feel good to have finally brought the science back.
That's good. Yeah. So we have. So you have how many more books? We have 3 up on the website because these are I figured it's on Judaica.com. The Jewish themes ones were appropriate. But how many books do you have now?
So as of next week, I will have 17 published, and I've sold.
I did not. Oh, I didn't know that. 17. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is cool.
That's awesome. Okay, so tell us a little bit about, let's say, like these are. Which is your favorite here from the 3? We have the Koala Chala, which is I'm assuming about Shabbos.
Yep.
We have the Hare and the Tortoise Race Across the Road, which is the story of the.
Yeah, it's a retelling of the Hare and Tortoise.
That's pretty
story.
cool. And then what do we have here? We have and then another sheet turned up for this is about the Seder.
This one, is a Passover story.
That's cool. So tell me about how'd you come up with these ideas? Would you anything specific?
Right. Well, for this one, the title just popped into my head. That's happened with a lot of my books. I just this phrase, and then another sheet turned up, just popped into my head one day. And this one's all written in rhyme.
You were
some of
counting
my
sheep
books,
and you're like, another sheep.
I don't know. And then I just love the idea of this, sheep family where they think it's going to be a small Seder, and then another sheep, and then another sheep, and then another sheep just keep turning up. So that one was really fun to write. And this one was my attempt to write a completely non-political book about Israel, and I realized later that there is no such thing. Like, the publisher put a map inside the book, and as soon as you have a map, it becomes political, and really there is no such thing as a non-political book about Israel. But still, I've heard from lots of families who have loved this book over the years, which has meant a lot to me, and I was able to put in what I thought would be some of the most child-friendly experiences and places in Israel that hare and tortoise follow along during their race. And then this one, this was one where my son Seth and I were playing a game where you have 2 clues. It's called Hinky Pinky, and you have 2 clues, and then the answer has to rhyme. So, like, in this case, the clues were an animal from Australia and the bread that we eat on Shabbat, and then the answer was koala hala, and I thought that would be such a good book title. And so Seth had thought of the Hinky Pinky, and then I had that title in my head for like maybe 2 years after that before I thought of a story to go with it. But then it turns out that the story is about this little koala who's always making a giant mess all the time, and she wants to help get ready for Shabbat, and her parents basically just want her to stay out of the way.
That is literally, by the way, that is literally my Thursday night in my house. I have kids, they want to cook,
right,
but they never clean up, they don't follow the recipe, it's a mess.
Yes, that similar situation definitely occurs in my house also. So yeah, so she's trying to find her way to contribute, and she ends up making this challah that has eucalyptus in it, which is their favorite food, and it's also about persistence, because she tries a lot of times to make the challah. It doesn't work, for various reasons. And then
As it's happened in my house, yes.
And she still makes a mess at the end, so, gotta have some reality in there.
One question I have, this is something I've always thought about, and I've obviously read a lot of children's books to my kids. I generally fall asleep while I'm doing it, but the question I always have is, what is the connection you have with the illustrator? So you're writing the words, you write the words, I'm assuming, before he gets illustrated, but with kids' books, the illustration is such an important part of the book. How does it work with you, with the illustrator?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a lot of kids, definitely, when I go to schools and talk about my books, they assume that I know the illustrator and that we're friends and that we did it together. And I have now made friends with some illustrators who have done my books, but I always met them after they had illustrated, and it all comes from the publisher. The publisher, reads the text, and they think about whose art, might be a good match. And then now that I've published more books, sometimes my opinion gets asked. That didn't used to be the case. But then really the publisher wants, in general, the author and the illustrator not to talk during that process, so that the illustrator is not feeling pressured by the author. I want this character to have red hair, or I want...
They do that on purpose. Because I would have thought maybe that,
keep them
that
apart.
the illustration would be done with the author's input, that you would know. I mean,
I put a few little notes in the text when it's important, like if there's something that needs to be illustrated that you wouldn't know from the text is supposed to be happening, but no. In general, no contact at all. Although there are a bunch of husband-wife author-illustrator teams.
They also don't, by the way, they also don't talk.
They talk a lot, and it's a very different process. And I do know a few authors and illustrators who have worked together on numerous books who now have a more collaborative process, but that is absolutely not the norm. The norm is complete separation.
Really? Okay. I honestly didn't know that. I would have thought the opposite, but that
I know,
sounds
it's really interesting.
I guess from an operational standpoint, it makes complete sense.
Yeah. But
It's like the publisher's like, yeah, you know what? No. We're gonna keep them separate.
Yeah, just so everyone can kind of do their job. You don't want the illustrator saying, well, it's too hard to draw a koala. Could you just have it be a dog or something? Right. Or,
Well, I guess so. I don't know. I just would have thought, I don't know. I don't know what I thought.
An emotional connection to the words, that's kind of always when you see that, you're like, oh, I wonder how close did they work together to get that image out of your head to get it. But
it never looks anything like how
right.
I've imagine in my head, but it pretty much always looks better. So, I mean, the publishers know what they're doing in terms of choosing the artists. And I mean, like this one, like this art is just, it's such a striking style.
Yes.
It's nothing like I would imagine it, but I love it. And I mean, that's one good thing about not being an author illustrator is that you do get to have your books illustrated by all these different amazing artists in so many different styles, whereas if you're an author illustrator, obviously there are advantages to that, but you know, you're only gonna have so many styles that you can personally do.
Right. I mean, it makes sense to me because like as a big impediment to thinking about writing a children's book is like, but I don't know how to draw. But you don't have to know how to draw.
Absolutely
Or I know how to draw, but I can't write any words. So you don't. I guess this makes a lot of sense to me now.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Well, that's
fine,
something like I mean I have a lot of people contacting me who want to write children's books, and a lot of times they want to do their own illustrations, and the conventional wisdom is unless you are a trained artist, not necessarily you've gone through school, but you've put many years of your craft, like do not try to illustrate your own book because
don't apply.
That's it's just not going to work
You're not
out.
going to get there.
Yeah.
Very nice. Okay. So you have a Hanukkah book coming out. I'm going to ask you to preview it now, even though it's not coming out yet for another year.
Right, it comes out in time for next Hanukkah. Books take a very long time
That's crazy.
to happen. So it's called Happy Lamaka, and it's about a llama family celebrating Hanukkah, and it's for very young kids.
More like a
It's
word.
also in rhyme. Yeah, exactly. And
By the way, I like in children's books, I like rhymes because it's easier to not fall asleep. I also like when there's different characters and I can do different voices when I'm reading it to my kids, even though my kids hate the voices. And I'll do like a Russian accent, I'll do an English accent, I'll do a Southern accent because otherwise I cannot stand
I am actually not good with voices, and I have had kids come up after I do a reading of, and it's a book that they know already. Kids will come up and be like, yeah, my mom kind of does the voices better. And I'm like, yeah, your mom probably does. Because I'm not a voices person. I like hearing people do voices,
Oh,
but it's
my
not
kids
my
hate
thing.
it. But I just can't get around having to, otherwise, because, with children's books, you have a few different ways to go. You have like a lot of text and a few pages or a lot of pages. Sometimes you have a little bit of text and a lot of pages. Sometimes you have like a sort of in-between amount, which is easier to flip through because the more flipping of the pages you have to do, the more engaged you can be in the reading. Right, and staying awake. I don't know why. 7:30 rolls around and I'm lying in bed with a kid. It's like they want to stay up and I'm like, I just want to go to bed. I'm too old at this point already. So the medium amounts of the ones when it gets longer, you got to do something. Your books are sort of in that medium, in that sweet spot of good amount of words per page ratio, I think.
Yeah. As a parent, I actually find the hardest books to read out loud for me are the ones that have no words, because then it's not like you can just flip.
Oh, yeah.
You have to explain what's happening.
Yeah, that's not
so
good either.
I admire them as an art form, but I find them very hard to actually read.
I like that you refer to it as an art form. To me, those very, very basic where I have to do a lot of the explaining. I sort of like to return those to the library. So the kids, they got a different way.
Dr. Seuss was the one that I had to return or hide because there are so many words and it takes so long.
The Madeline books are also like that.
Yeah.
A lot of words. A lot of words.
Definitely the trend in the kidlit publishing is have shorter books with fewer words.
I like the conjunction kid lit. We gotta make a category like that on the site. That's awesome.
We've got an industry insider here, ready to go.
Kid lit. I don't want to put that on the website. That's gonna be on the banner. Here's like kid lit stuff.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming in. I know Rosh Hashanah is coming up this week, by the way. And in case anyone wants to know, it'll be Sunday night. And we'll be back here next Wednesday.
Yes.
And we'll start getting ready for Yom Kippur and for Sukkot. We'll start telling you about, we have 1 week actually. Last week is the next week to do all the Yom Kippur stuff. There's not that much.
We'll consolidate a
a
nice
lot
little flow for you.
Yeah, you sort of just spend the day in shul, but it's okay. these books, there'll be a link below in the posting. Will be on the website. They're on the website now. You can order them directly. We'll have actually, with the exception of one of them, they'll be in hardcover. They'll be in the hardcover form on our site, which is exciting. And yeah, we wish you guys. We really appreciate you coming in. We're really excited. I'm so happy you're able to come in. And certainly come back when you're. I mean, you can come back before then. It's not a problem. But,
because I would be so helpful chatting about.
Whatever. Listen, I mean, it's maybe our kid lit section does not need some help, but definitely come back when the new book is being released. We're really excited about that. And yeah, I would again use wisdom.
Yep.
Oh, one other thing we're going to do a giveaway.
Yes.
So what do we have to do for the giveaway?
That is a great question. I'm thinking that Koala Kala in the comments needs to be posted.
Okay, you gotta
Either
post
like
Koala Kala.
and share,
Yeah.
and write Koala Kala, and you'll be entered to win
All three of these
books.
books. We're going to do that. We're going to give it away. You're going to have a few weeks to do it because probably over the next week I won't check anything because it's going to be.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd say you probably have about 2 weeks, so like it, share it.
We'll do it again next week. So like, share, put Koala Kala into the comments.
Yes.
And you'll be entered to win all three of the books.
Mm-hmm.
I like that, Koala Kala.
I figured it's appropriate. It's right
good.
there.
Okay, perfect. Then you can have the challah this week for
Exactly.
for Shabbos.
Oh, and I can say one more thing, which is that if the kids are home a lot over the holidays and you're looking for something to do, something that a lot of synagogues have done with this book is you make challah out of Play-Doh, like kids often do in preschool, but if you add like a few drops of eucalyptus oil, then it's just like the eucalyptus challah that they do in the book, and it smells really strong, and kids love it. I don't know,
Really?
I personally am not a huge fan of the smell
I do like
of eucalyptus, but
Really?
kids get so
So it's
into
not
it.
like a spa, it
And
smells like?
so, yeah, and supposedly it's really
Nice.
calming, which is
Right.
what you want when your kids are home for many hours and you're feeding them honey, which
And then they're like,
is big.
you're like, all right, now it's time to massage, right?
You get the eucalyptus and the mint.
Right.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you guys very much for joining us for Wednesday Wisdoms and our special guest, Dr. Laura Gehl. And we will see you guys next week. Have a Shana Tova.